Let me say something that might surprise you. Most senior care companies are not struggling because they don't care. They're struggling because they care too much inside systems that are stretched thin. And when senior care companies burn out internally, families feel it. You feel it in slower callbacks, in rushed tours, in rotating caregivers, in leadership turnover, in communication gaps. It doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it just feels like tension. Today, I want to unpack why so many senior care companies are burning out internally and why understanding that helps families make calmer, smarter decisions. Hi, I'm Corpus, a senior transition specialist and seniors real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I work with families navigating senior living, housing transitions, and care decisions. And I also work closely with operators, community directors, and senior care professionals behind the scenes. That gives me a dual vantage point. I see what families experience. I also see what providers are carrying internally. This is another episode of Sandwich Generation Solutions, powered by the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we bring clarity to senior transitions that are often made under pressure. Let's dive in. Let's start with the obvious. The demand for senior care has exploded. We have an aging population, longer life expectancy, higher acuity levels, families living farther apart, more dual income adult children. In the Bay Area, especially Contra Costa, Alameda, Santa Clara, San Mateo, San Francisco counties, families are juggling work, kids, and caregiving simultaneously. Senior care companies are absorbing all of that pressure. More inquiries, more urgent hospital discharges, more complex medical needs. But the infrastructure hasn't expanded at the same pace as demand. That's pressure point number one. Caregiving is emotionally demanding. It requires patience, physical stamina, emotional regulation, clinical awareness, and compassion under pressure. And yet many caregivers are underpaid relative to responsibility, working overtime, covering shifts, and managing families in crisis. When you combine labor shortages with emotional labor, burnout becomes inevitable. Not because people don't care, because they care too much for too long without relief. Families might see this as, why are there new staff members again? Why does communication feel inconsistent? Internally, it often looks like we're doing everything we can to keep this together. Now, layer in financial pressure. Operating a senior care community in the Bay Area is expensive. Real estate costs, insurance, regulatory compliance, workers' comp, food inflation, wage increases. At the same time, families are price sensitive. So companies try to keep base pricing competitive, add services incrementally, and absorb cost increases quietly. That creates margin compression, which means leadership teams are often operating in survival mode. When leadership is in survival mode, strategic communication suffers. Follow-up slows down. Teams feel stretched. Families sense tension even if they can't name it. Now let's talk about emotional burnout at the leadership level. Here's something families rarely see. Executive directors, home care owners, memory care administrators, community relations directors, they are holding staff morale, occupancy goals, family complaints, state inspections, crisis events, and financial targets, all at once. And when leaders are stretched thin, culture suffers, not because they don't want to lead well, but because they're firefighting constantly. This is where internal burnout begins. And burnout at the top trickles down. Now let's bring this back to you. You may experience delayed callbacks, rushed tours, confusing billing, inconsistent messaging, and turnover. And you might assume the place is disorganized, they don't care, this feels chaotic. Sometimes that's true, but often you're feeling internal strain ripple outward. This doesn't excuse poor care, but it changes how you evaluate it. Instead of looking for perfection, you look for resilience. How does the company respond under pressure? How transparent are they when things go wrong? And how stable is their leadership? Burnout isn't the same as incompetence, but unmanaged burnout becomes risk. When senior care companies burn out internally, communication fractures, staff turnover increases, family trust erodes, decisions get rushed, and mistakes happen. Not from malice, from overload. That's why families need to tour early before crisis. When you're not under pressure, you can observe calmly. You can compare patterns. You can ask operational questions. You can sense culture. When you tour during a hospital discharge deadline, you don't see clearly. And stress systems plus stressed families equals amplified tension. Now, here's the hopeful part. Some companies are handling this pressure better than others. The strongest senior care organizations right now are transparent about staffing, clear about pricing structures, communicative during crisis, collaborative with families, and honest about limitations. They don't pretend stress doesn't exist. They manage it openly. That's the differentiator. Not zero stress, managed stress. So today we covered why demand has exploded, how workforce strain fuels burnout, how financial compression tightens margins, how leadership stress ripples outward, and why families feel internal strain even if they can't see it. The senior care industry isn't collapsing, it's compressed. And when you understand that compression, you ask better questions. You interpret tension more accurately. You choose based on leadership and transparency, not just aesthetics. This has been another episode of Sandwich Generation Solutions, powered by the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast. If your family is navigating senior living decisions, housing transitions, or trying to understand what you're sensing behind the scenes, I can help. Schedule a free consultation and learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. You can also watch and listen to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast right here on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If this episode brought you clarity, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Reviews help more families find the show before stress turns into crisis. I'm Dale Corpus, and I'll see you on the next episode.